The first bell toll cut through the night like a blade. Sister Agnes stood in the belfry, her silhouette stark against the moonlit sky. Her hands gripped the thick rope, pulling with a strength that belied her slender frame. The second toll followed, then the third, each one sending vibrations through the ancient stone walls of the chapel. 12 times she pulled, 12 times the sound rolled across the sleeping valley. When the final echo faded, she released the rope and stood motionless. The moonlight caught the single tear that traced down her cheek. Below, on the altar, something glinted in the darkness, a small, dark object that hadn't been there before the bells began. Sister Agnes descended the narrow spiral staircase, her footsteps barely audible on the worn stone steps. The chapel lay empty before her, pews bathed in silver light streaming through stained glass. She approached the altar with measured steps, her eyes fixed on the small metallic object. An iron tear, perfect in form, cold to the touch. She didn't question its appearance. Some mysteries weren't meant to be understood, only accepted. She placed it carefully beside the others. 11 more, one for each night, she had rung the bell at midnight. The chapel stood on a hillside overlooking a valley that time seemed to have forgotten. Fields that once yielded bountiful harvests now lay fallow, the small farming community dwindling year by year. The stone walls of the chapel had weathered centuries, bearing witness to generations of prayers, confessions, and silent suffering. Morning light revealed Sister Agnes moving through her duties with practiced efficiency. Her habit, simple and worn at the edges, swayed gently as she swept the chapel floor. At 52, her face retained a beauty that transcended age, high cheekbones, clear blue eyes, and a mouth that seemed poised to smile, though it rarely did. "Good morning, sister," Father Thomas said, entering through the heavy wooden doors. "You're early as always." Sister Agnes nodded, her customary response. 20 years had passed since she'd taken a vow of silence along with her other commitments to the order. 2 decades of prayers whispered only in her mind, of thoughts kept locked behind pressed lips. Father Thomas, elderly now with hands that trembled slightly when he raised the communion cup, had been there when she arrived. He knew nothing of her before that day, a young woman with haunted eyes and a determination that brooked no argument. "The Petersons' youngest will be baptized this Sunday," he continued, used to carrying both sides of their conversations. "Would you prepare the font?" Another nod, another task to fill the hours. The villagers respected Sister Agnes, though few knew her well. They saw only her devotion, her unwavering service. They didn't see her at midnight, alone in the belfry. They didn't see the iron tears accumulating on the altar, a strange alchemy born of grief and memory. That evening, as Sister Agnes prepared the altar for the next morning's service, her fingers caught the edge of the altar cloth. It shifted, revealing a yellowed corner of paper that shouldn't have been there. Curious, she tugged gently, freeing a letter from its hiding place. The handwriting struck her before the words did. Bold strokes, confident loops, a hand she would know blindfolded. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the brittle paper. "My dearest Eliza," it began. No one had called her that name in 20 years. "If you are reading this, you have remained at the chapel as you intended. I write this the day after you told me of your decision, though I know not if I'll have the courage to leave it here." Sister Agnes, Eliza, sank to her knees, the stone floor cold through her habit. Michael's words flowed over her like water breaking through a dam. Words of love, of confusion, of acceptance. Words written 20 years ago by hands she had once held, had once imagined would hold hers through all the years to come. "I will respect your choice, though I cannot pretend to understand it. What calling could be stronger than what we shared? What God would ask you to bury your laughter, your voice, your love? But I will wait. 1 year. At the old oak where we first met. If you do not come, I will know your mind is settled, and I will trouble you no more." The letter slipped from her fingers, floating to the floor like a fallen leaf. 1 year. He had waited 1 year, while she had waited 20, not even knowing there was something to wait for. The letter must have been hidden, perhaps fallen behind the altar, unseen until now. That night, Sister Agnes didn't sleep. Memories long suppressed rushed back with devastating clarity. Michael's face, sunbrowned and laughing. The way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. The plans they'd made, sitting by the river, dreaming of a small farm, children running through meadows. And then the fever that took her parents, her brother. The crushing weight of being the sole survivor. The guilt that followed her like a shadow. Why had she been spared? What purpose was she meant to serve? The questions that drove her to the chapel door, seeking answers, seeking penance for the sin of surviving. When midnight came, she climbed to the belfry as she had every night for the past 12 days. Her hand closed around the rope, but this time, she hesitated. The bell's voice had always spoken her sorrow. What would it say tonight, when sorrow mingled with regret, with possibilities never explored? The first toll shattered the silence. As she pulled the rope again and again, tears streamed freely down her face. For the first time in 20 years, she opened her mouth, a silent scream joining the bell's cry. 12 tolls, 12 years of silence for each. When she descended to the altar, a 13th iron tear awaited her, larger than the others, gleaming with an almost unnatural light. The following days passed in a haze. Sister Agnes performed her duties mechanically, her mind elsewhere. Father Thomas noticed the change, but said nothing. He had learned long ago that some wounds were too deep for words. The villagers whispered. The silent nun seemed more distant than ever, her eyes focused on something they couldn't see. Some claimed to hear the chapel bell at odd hours, though most dismissed it as wind in the tower. Each night, Sister Agnes returned to the belfry. Each night, the bell tolled 12 times. Each night, another iron tear appeared on the altar, until they formed a circle, a strange rosary of grief and remembrance. 1 week after finding the letter, she discovered something else. While cleaning the altar, her cloth caught on a small imperfection in the wood. Investigating, she found a hidden compartment, skillfully concealed in the altar's base. Inside lay a small iron cross, simple in design but beautiful in its craftsmanship. She recognized it immediately. Michael had been the blacksmith's apprentice, his hands capable of coaxing beauty from unyielding metal. This cross, she knew without being told, had been meant for her. Perhaps a wedding gift, or simply a token of his love. Holding it, memories cascaded through her mind. Michael teaching her to skip stones across the river. The first time he'd kissed her, hesitant and sweet, tasting of apples. Dancing at the harvest festival, her skirts swirling as he spun her until they were both dizzy with laughter and love. The cross grew warm in her hand, as if responding to her memories. In that moment, Sister Agnes understood what the midnight bell had been calling her to face. Not just her grief, not just her loss, but the choice she had made, to bury herself alongside her family, to punish herself for surviving by locking away the woman she had been. The iron tears were not just manifestations of sorrow, but pieces of herself, fragments of Eliza forged in the fire of Agnes's devotion. Each toll had been both lamentation and liberation, breaking the chains she had forged link by link. That night, she didn't go to the belfry at midnight. Instead, she knelt at the altar, the iron cross pressed between her palms, the circle of tears surrounding her like silent witnesses. "Michael," she whispered, her voice rusty from disuse, barely audible even in the perfect silence of the chapel. The sound of her own voice startled her, a stranger's voice, yet undeniably hers. She thought of the oak tree where they used to meet. It would still be standing, gnarled and ancient, on the hill overlooking the river bend. Had he waited there, watching the path from the village, hoping to see her coming toward him? Had he given up hope all at once when she didn't appear, or had it drained away slowly, hour by hour, as the sun crossed the sky? Morning found her still kneeling, the first light of dawn painting the chapel in gold and rose. Her decision crystallized with the growing day. She would go to the oak. Not with any hope of finding Michael. 20 years was too long, life too unpredictable, but to honor what had been, to acknowledge the choice made and the path not taken. Father Thomas found her at breakfast, her eyes clear for the first time in years. "I must leave for a day," she said, her voice stronger now. "There is something I need to do." The old priest's eyebrows rose in surprise, not just at the request, but at the breaking of her silence. He studied her face for a long moment before nodding. "We all have pilgrimages to make," he said simply. "Some lead us to holy places, others lead us back to ourselves." Sister Agnes changed into simple traveling clothes, a plain dress kept for practical work, a shawl against the morning chill. She packed the iron cross and a single iron tear in a small cloth bag. The others she left arranged on the altar, a testament to nights of reckoning. The path to the oak was overgrown but still visible, winding through meadows now wild with uncultivated beauty. Each step felt like moving backward in time, the weight of years falling away. Birds called overhead, the wind rustled through tall grasses, and Sister Agnes, Eliza, found herself humming a tune she hadn't thought of in decades. The oak appeared on the horizon, its massive crown spreading against the blue sky. As she approached, her steps slowed. What exactly did she expect to find? What resolution could there be after so many years? The tree stood as it always had, roots gripping the hillside, branches reaching toward heaven. Carved into its trunk were initials, E and M, surrounded by a rough heart. The carving had weathered with the tree, the edges softened by time, but still clearly visible. Eliza traced the letters with her fingertips. Michael had carved them the day he'd first told her he loved her. She'd scolded him for hurting the tree, and he'd laughed, saying the oak would outlive them both, carrying their story long after they were gone. He had been right about that, at least. She sat beneath the spreading branches, leaning against the trunk as they had done so often. From this vantage point, she could see the chapel in the distance, small and stark against the landscape. For 20 years, those walls had been her world. Now, sitting under the oak, she felt both the immensity of time past and the strange compression of memory that made it seem like yesterday. "I should have come," she said aloud to the empty air. "I should have at least told you why I couldn't." A rustling sound made her turn. An elderly man stood a few yards away, leaning on a walking stick, watching her with undisguised surprise. "I thought I was the only one who still came here," he said. Eliza stared, her heart pounding against her ribs. The face was lined, the hair white instead of brown, but the eyes, those eyes were unchanged, still the same warm hazel that had looked at her with such tenderness. "Michael," she breathed. He squinted, taking a step closer, then stopped abruptly. "Eliza? Can it be you?" They regarded each other across the space of 2 decades, neither moving, as if afraid the other might vanish like morning mist. "You became a nun," he said finally. Not a question, but a statement of fact. "Yes. I waited. That day. From sunrise until the stars came out. I didn't know. Your letter, I only found it last week." It had fallen behind the altar. Michael's face registered shock, then a complex mixture of emotions too tangled to name. "All these years. I thought you'd read it and chosen your path regardless." "I would have come," Eliza said. "At least to explain. To say goodbye properly." He nodded slowly, then gestured to the ground beside her. "May I?" She moved over, making space beneath the tree. They sat in silence for a long moment, the years between them both a gulf and a bridge. "I'm married," he said eventually. "Sarah Tanner. You might remember her. The baker's daughter. She always had flour in her hair." A small smile. "Yes. She was kind. We had a good life. 3 children, all grown now. She passed 5 years ago." Eliza absorbed this information, surprised to find she felt no jealousy, only a gentle sadness for his loss. "I'm sorry. Life goes on," he said simply. "Even when we think it can't." He paused. "What about you? Were you happy? In your calling?" The question hung between them, deceptively simple, yet impossibly complex. "I found purpose," she said carefully. "After losing my family, I needed structure. Meaning. The order gave me that. But happiness?" Eliza looked toward the chapel, considering. There were moments of peace, of certainty. "Is that happiness?" "I don't know." Michael followed her gaze. "You still live there?" "Yes. Though." She hesitated. "Things have changed this past week." "I've changed." She told him about the bell, the iron tears, finding his letter, and the cross. As she spoke, she reached into her bag and withdrew the cross, holding it out to him. Michael took it, his weathered hands cradling the iron as if it were made of glass. "I made this for our wedding," he said softly. "When you didn't come, I couldn't bear to keep it, but I couldn't throw it away either. So I hid it in the altar, thinking perhaps someday you might find it and remember." "I never forgot," Eliza said. "I just buried those memories." Until the bell called them back. They talked as the sun arced across the sky, filling in the blank spaces of 20 years apart. Michael spoke of his blacksmith shop, his children, the gradual decline of the village as young people left for cities and opportunities elsewhere. Eliza shared stories of life in the chapel, the changing seasons viewed through stained glass, the quiet rituals that had structured her days. As afternoon began to wane, Michael asked the question that had hovered unspoken between them. What will you do now? Will you go back to the chapel? Eliza considered, watching a hawk circle lazily overhead. I don't know, she admitted. For so long, I've been Sister Agnes. I'm not sure I know how to be Eliza anymore. Perhaps you don't have to choose, Michael suggested. Perhaps you can be both, the woman who found strength in faith and the woman who once laughed by this river. The simplicity of his words struck her with unexpected force. Not a rejection of her past 20 years, but an integration, acknowledging all parts of herself, the choices made and the roads not taken. As the sun began to set, they walked back toward the village together, moving slowly to accommodate Michael's aging knees. They parted at the crossroads, one path leading to the village, the other to the chapel. Will I see you again? Michael asked, his voice carefully neutral, offering neither pressure nor expectation. Eliza smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. Yes, she said. I think you will. She watched him walk away, his figure growing smaller against the darkening sky, before turning toward the chapel. The bell tower stood silhouetted against the sunset, waiting. That night, as midnight approached, Sister Agnes, Eliza, climbed the familiar steps to the belfry one last time. Her hand closed around the rope, feeling its rough texture against her palm. For 12 nights, she had rung the bell in sorrow and confusion. Tonight would be different. The first toll rang out clear and strong, rolling across the valley. Not a cry of pain now, but a declaration. With each pull of the rope, she felt another piece of herself coming into alignment. Nun and woman, Agnes and Eliza, past and future. 12 tolls, 12 reclamations. When she descended to the altar, she found what she expected, a final iron tear, larger than all the others, gleaming in the moonlight. She added it to the circle, completing the strange rosary of transformation. In the morning, Father Thomas found her in the chapel garden, tending to the herbs with careful attention. You found what you were looking for? He asked, noting the change in her bearing, the lightness that hadn't been there before. I found what I wasn't looking for, she replied, and in doing so, found myself. The old priest nodded, understanding more than she had said. And will you stay with us, Sister Agnes? She considered the question, feeling the weight of the name, the role, the life she had built. Yes, she said finally. But perhaps I might speak more often, and perhaps I might sometimes visit the village. Father Thomas smiled. The order's rules are guides, not chains. We serve best when we bring our whole selves to our calling. In the days that followed, the villagers noticed the change in the silent nun who was silent no more. Her voice, when she chose to use it, was soft but clear. Her eyes, once downcast, now met theirs with gentle directness. And sometimes, they saw her walking with the old blacksmith, their conversation flowing as naturally as the river that wound through the valley. The iron tears remained on the altar, arranged in their perfect circle. Father Thomas asked about them once, and Eliza explained as best she could. How grief transformed becomes strength, how loss acknowledged becomes wisdom. They are reminders, she said, touching one with her fingertip, that we are forged by what we endure, but not defined by it. The chapel bell no longer tolled at midnight. Its voice was saved for proper times, morning prayer, evening vespers, Sunday service. But sometimes, in the quiet hours between dusk and dawn, villagers swore they could hear its echo, a phantom sound that brought not fear, but a strange comfort. And if anyone noticed the nun who sometimes sat beneath the old oak tree, her face turned toward the sun, they didn't mention it. Some transformations are too sacred for words, some journeys too personal for judgment. The iron cross found a new home, hanging from a simple chain around Eliza's neck, hidden beneath her habit but close to her heart, a testament to what was lost, what was found, and the courage to acknowledge both. In time, the story of the silent nun and the midnight bell became just that, a story whispered by children who found the iron tears on the altar fascinating and mysterious. But Eliza knew the truth of it, carried it with her through days of prayer and service, through quiet conversations with Michael, through the gradual reconciliation of all the pieces of herself. And sometimes, When the moon was full and the night was still, she would stand in the chapel doorway, looking out at the valley bathed in silver light, and whisper a prayer of gratitude for bells that call us home to ourselves, for tears that forge us stronger, and for love that waits, patient as iron, enduring as stone.